Good afternoon, my late night reviewers. Today's going to be review of trial day 17, and the only one on the stand today is Brian Higgens, so let's get into it. So glad to have everybody back. Just so you know, this video took a little longer for me to get up and get to you because I did things a little bit different, and so it took a little longer to edit, so let's get into it. Before I read these text messages into this record here on our video, Judge Beverly did give a warning, as she always does when it comes to electronic devices, and she said that you are to use it as the defendant's state of mind, as the narrative of her relationship with John and the potential motive. So just so you know, Brian's voice really does not match how he looks. So just so you know, in what I'm going to be showing you next, I'm going to be doing a voiceover for Karen Reed, and you're going to hear the actual audio of Brian Higgens talking. Hey Brian, it's the weed whacker. Brian tells us a story about how and why Karen started going by the weed whacker. Apparently at some point, Karen was outside cutting weeds, I believe in front of John's yard, with a weed whacker, and Brian had drove past and he honked at her and then started to slow down, and she apparently flipped him off. And when he turned around and started to roll down the window, she started yelling, "My husband's a Canton police officer." And so he figured she must not have recognized him, so he rolled it down further. And so then that's where this whole conversation came from. It's like, oh, okay, this is Brian, I do know who this is, whatever. And then we have now weed whacker as the nickname for Karen. Hey Brian, it's the weed whacker. Did you try those Smirnoff screwdrivers? I stopped at the Hilly for one last night. Smile face.
Haha, how did you get my digits?
The Melissa and Lito show.
Haha, I thought you creeped John's phone. Haha.
No way. I was the last person in Greater Canton who didn't have your number. I think even Carrie has it.
What, with a bunch of question marks? I just don't give my personal number out to anyone. How would Carrie have my number with a bunch of question marks?
Melissa had it. I prefer weed whacker.
That's the thing about nicknames.
We were tossing around the idea of a short vacay with the current show. Wanted to see if you were game.
You don't have a say. Vacation where?
I know. They need to happen organically. I'm the queen of nicknames. Was just going to rent a beach house in Fort Lauderdale. Something quick and easy. I'm the queen of vacays too. Always a good time.
I'm going to Nashville next month, 19th to 21st, for a benefit. One of our guys got shot in the head. You guys should come. So there's a photograph of somebody with a weed whacker.
No, you're not a creep.
Nope.
You're kind of a loner, which I used to be.
No, not really. I have a ton of buddies, but I only let a handful of friends in that I'm tight with. So you think you got me figured out? Circle of trust in quotes.
Yeah, I said loner, not loser. Smile face. I assume you know a lot of people. You never really can figure out anyone completely. Your dad died when you were young?
That he died in March of 2020. I'm so not a loser, you won't figure me out. LOL.
No one is a loser. I just didn't mean loner to imply friendless. I'm sorry, that's recent. It wasn't COVID, was it?
Cancer.
I know you date girls who don't lock the house behind them, and you are private and observant. I'm sorry, what kind?
Lung, brain, kidney, and pelvis. How do you know all these things? LOL. You're funny.
Yikes. Wow, that's rough. Jesus, I'm sorry. We each had a lot at the hillside.
Don't be sorry. Life is hard sometimes. I always figure it out. Who chats? Question mark.
Life is hard, but losing people is the hardest. I'm so sorry. We chat.
That's all you got? We chat? Sure, you're from Brockton. Spit it out.
You and I chatted about the girl who kept forgetting to lock the door.
Oh, she has been out of play for 3 months now.
Out of the rotation?
I just got a Saturday invite.
Brian's referring to John inviting him over to watch a game at John's house. Did you say yes?
Not yet, with a bunch of periods, but did respond.
What did you say, Mr. Exclusive?
No, I just don't want to intrude on your couple's night. Haha, I'm shy.
We prefer to hang out with non-couples. Bob Gallery is probably coming too solo. We'll probably do cards or something at some point. I am inviting you.
Haha.
John said, Brian is being wishy-washy now.
Haha, did you tell him you texted me?
No.
Thumbs up. You cranky now, question mark?
Haha, no. Just stop being so anti-couple. Most couples don't even like each other.
Name a few.
Few? I don't know. All of them. They all want to hang out with single people. At this point, Brian has now hung out at John's house. This is after the game.
Who is gonna be myself again? Foul ball.
You stink.
You suck and you're double trouble.
You're hot.
Are you serious or messing with me?
No, I'm serious.
Failing is mutual. Is that bad? How long have you thought that?
Are you okay driving? You don't want to stay here?
I'm fine. I have an office at the PD. You didn't answer the question.
Rather you stay here.
I wish. I think you're messing with me
Why do you think that?
because this is so out of left field. Where did these failings come from?
I just think you're like me.
Meaning? Question mark.
Do you have your own kids?
I have no kids. How am I like you? Question mark. Hello?
Aren't we alike?
Did I think so? So why did you get my number and reach out to me?
Question.
Shoot straight with me?
I told you, I think we're alike, right?
Yes. Agree. Now what?
I don't know.
Shouldn't you know?
Do you like me?
Yes, from jump.
When was jump?
First time I saw you.
When was that?
Hillside for your sure. Hillside for sure. When were you interested?
I don't know. You're just my type.
You think you can handle me? I thought you were happy. Question mark.
How do you know if I'm happy?
I just assumed.
Are you hard to handle?
Question mark. What do you like about me?
I just feel like you're from my neighborhood.
Yeah, ditto.
And I think you're hot.
You really think that? I have always thought that about you.
What?
That you're hot, smart, witty, but I didn't think you were interested.
Witty?
Yeah, meaning quick with a response. Tell me why you got my number and reached out to me.
Just thought we were the same / from the same neighborhood.
Are you afraid to say what's on your mind?
No, didn't I?
I'm glad I stopped by. I should have come earlier. Do you really live in Mansfield?
Yeah, I was basically begging you.
You don't have to beg me. I meant to say beg.
Huh?
I will give you what you want. How are you texting right now? Leaving me hanging?
No.
Kid, kinda?
How am I texting?
Is everyone asleep?
I'm just wide awake on my phone. Yes, they are.
I should have stayed LOL. So now what? Question mark.
Yes, you should have.
That would have been distracting. So now what?
Now what?
Balls in your court?
What do you want to do?
Loaded question. What do you want? Question mark.
I asked you first.
Nope, you initiated this. Spit it out.
Hey, we're single, we don't have kids, we can do whatever we want.
Don't you have a boyfriend? Question mark.
Where are you?
Canton.
Where?
My office is at the PD. Why? Are you going to Mansfield? Question mark.
Where is that?
Canton PD.
I have a house there from before I reconnected with John.
Oh, I feel like you're not really saying what's on your mind.
Do you like me?
Yes, clearly.
Come over to my house.
When? Question mark.
When works for you?
Whoever, whenever, when works for you? Question mark.
I asked you first.
I think you're messing with me.
I'm glad you came over tonight.
Me too. Ball's in your court. What do you want, Karen? You look great tonight.
So he described that Karen Reed planted a kiss on him, quote unquote, and that John was in the bathroom at the time Karen had done this. And she kissed him when he had left John's house after the game. I looked great. You're full of it. Brian said, I think you're hot. Always have thought that. Just have not revealed my thoughts. Karen responded, I'm hot for the hillside. Low comps. Brian said, knock it off. You're hot, period.
Are you glad you walked me out? Question mark.
Yes. Smiley face. Are you?
Definitely. Yes. Said, are you going home tonight or tomorrow AM?
We kissed, right?
Question mark. Is this a trick question?
I don't know when I'm going home. I'm selling my house. What? A trick question.
Are you moving to Canton? I'm following your lead with this.
I live here, but I have property in Emfield. Why my lead? I don't want any responsibility.
You started this, right? Question mark. Why did you get my number and it says each out to me? It meant to say reach out to me. Still have not told me.
Sorry, should I not have?
I'm fine with it. Just don't know why you can't answer.
You're mad at me?
OMG, no, not at all. You're being silly.
I told you. I just think you're like me and I am attracted to you a lot.
Feeling is mutual. I just never saw this coming.
Why?
Because I just assumed you were happy with your situation.
I was, but things have deteriorated.
Why? Question mark. How so? Question mark. What did Melissa say when you asked for my number? Question mark.
It is very, very complicated. He and I dated when we were kids, and then his sister died and everything got fucked up.
He seems very into you.
I just told Melissa that I had your number, but lost it.
I said, that's cute. She wasn't suspicious? Question mark.
No, she's great.
Does she know you like me? Question mark.
She's a sweetie. We just agreed that you're great. Wink. Yeah, but where is that? I have had all my shit here for a couple years and my house has been vacant, but I'd like to get closer to the water.
Are you breaking up or staying together?
I don't know. He hooked up with another girl on vacation. I am very close to his niece. It is a very fucked up situation.
When was that and how did you find out he hooked up? Question mark. I don't want to complicate your situation.
We went away for New Year's, the four of us. I put the kids to bed and found him in the lobby of our hotel all over one of our friends. Whatever, it doesn't matter.
It does matter.
We did kiss earlier, no?
I think you initiated that. No? Question mark.
Yep. Do I owe you an apology?
Said OMG, no. Why are you being sensitive?
I'm not.
Kinda.
Never. What do you want from me?
What's on the table? Question mark.
What do you want ideally?
The real deal.
It doesn't exist.
I can go to any base, but usually Hanscom and Bedford are down to the Cape.
Which base down the Cape? Which branch?
Army.
I'm not abnormally sensitive.
The Joint Base Cape Cod. I won't be so hard on you.
Oh my gosh, you're not. You called me trouble. That makes me sound bad.
I was just playing with you.
You weren't, but that's okay.
Stop being sensitive, please.
I am not. It's an old colonial. It has a lot of bedrooms.
More than you clearly need. Are you moving to Canton? Question mark.
I know, seriously, some rooms I only go into dust. Not anytime soon. I'm there most of the time, but sometimes it's a lot.
A lot. Why? Question mark. Do you even know what you want? Question mark. Or who? Question mark.
Because I went from being solo to trying to give attention to kids who aren't mine. And I never wanted kids.
I thought you were in this happy relationship.
Everyone is happy at Hillside.
Oh God, you avoid things.
It's just a very, very complicated dynamic with the four of us. He isn't cut out for what he's doing, and the kids present constant issues.
I think he believes he is doing the right thing.
Well, of course he is, but his heart isn't in it. It's only because he was very, very close to his sister.
I know how you feel, kinda. I was married, and when I met her, she had a 2.5-year-old. I went from being single to being a dad. It's hard. I'm divorced since 2017 and have no kids.
I try very hard, but they are very spoiled. And they're not my family. My parents keep telling me I'd feel differently if they were mine or my own sisters. Then I told you he got drunk and sloppy on NYE while we were away, and that has really affected me.
I responded, what did he exactly do? Question mark.
I never got married, and now somehow I'm arguing with someone about raising kids.
I responded, why don't you tell me? Question mark.
He was a puddle all day and then disappeared. Then I found him all over a friend's sister in the lobby of our hotel. And she's gross, which I think may actually be worse. Not sure.
Oh God, did they bang?
So I was the kid celebrating New Year's without him, which shouldn't be my role. No, I doubt it. He was a mess.
Was it the first time with her, or do you think there were others?
I don't really think there were others. I'm with him all of the time. He never seems to want to go anywhere without me. But honestly, the issues with the kids bother me more than him actually cheating. They are constant, and it feels like a lose-lose.
You clearly have a lot of feelings swirling inside you.
Yeah, it's very complicated. Sorry for the rant.
You can vent, babe.
Basically, I just spread myself too thin, and sometimes it's thankless. You probably felt that way too.
I did it times. It was one, not two, thankfully.
Want to grab a drink?
That if you gave me some notice, I could have.
You said you were adaptable.
I am, but I have my work truck with me and not my personal. Do you get angry when you don't get your way?
That sounds like an excuse. I rarely get my way.
You getting my number from Melissa and reaching out to me? Question mark.
And on vacay and probably a few other occasions.
That you didn't really beg.
I asked at least twice. How do people usually reach out to each other?
Why would I have thought you had any interest in me? Question mark. Usually do it when they do live with someone, and then I said do not do it.
Maybe, maybe not.
I could go on, but I do not want to pump. It should say your shit up too much.
Thanks for saying that, smiley face. But low comps at Hillside.
You know how to ruin something nice. I frequent other places.
John has showed me about 5 times the Ring video of me walking you out on set. And my voice and my accent are killing me softly. Throw up face.
What?
Yeah, he has cameras everywhere. You cops.
Jesus.
It's like, Christ, are you guys hooking up?
OMG, great. I don't need drama, dude.
No, it's fine.
Seriously?
I am serious.
You legit planted one on me.
I know where the cameras are anyway, duh. Oh my gosh, Bruns.
So your slick move isn't on there? With some question marks?
Course not.
Oh my God, I almost an emoji with somebody throwing up.
It was a peck. I kissed Carrie and Gay Jeff too.
Yeah, weak. I agree.
LOL. Funny.
So now he is jealous of me? Question mark.
No, I told you he likes you a lot.
Which makes this worse? Question mark.
You said or did something at the bar last week and he goes, I like Brian more and more.
I think he's a good dude too.
Yeah, he is.
Funny. What's your end game? What do you want from me? You will just confuse the shit out of yourself because I'm a lot of fun. It was fun.
I've complimented you today.
And kicked my nuts in.
Oh my gosh, how?
If I had more notice, I would have grabbed a drink somewhere, so I'm all set with quotations. That's fine, but I am not asking again.
Well, it was 7 p.m. and I'm super cool, so right now, asking again. Wink.
Coming to your house would have been bad for the both of us. For starters, you wouldn't have wanted me to leave.
Now equals not. That sounds good.
That's trouble.
Why? No, I'm busting your chops. It's okay.
No, you are sensitive. Nice try. You don't think if I came over for a drink, we would have gotten carried away.
You said you were adaptable and tons of fun. I took that as an invite for an invite.
Oh, okay.
I'm 42. I know what happens when you invite someone over for a drink.
You're the master of avoidance, so you think I would just give it up.
I've been a lot in my life. I have a little bit of a carpe diem mindset. Been through. What am I avoiding? I'm not afraid of being direct.
Some of my questions.
Okay, which? Ask again.
Nope, tricks are for kids.
I'm pretty sure we would have hooked up.
Okay.
I can't say that.
I said, of course you can.
Did I miss any other questions, sir?
Probably. Are you having a drink right now? Question mark.
Yeah, on my second.
Said, show me what you got.
None of that is true. I'm not talking to any other guys, and I have issues with John, and things are far from perfect. You just happen to know about him because we all hang out at the same bar. I'm sure you talk to other girls. That's what single people do. I'm not married, and neither are you. Neither is John.
Was that your attempt at a lecture or deductive reasoning? Question mark. What do you want from me? Question mark.
That's just how I think/feel. You don't need to approve. I've already answered the last question a couple times, I think.
I responded, I'm not judging you, never have, never will.
You shouldn't. I don't know what your private life is about, nor is it my business. My point is that there's a difference between being married to someone and dating them, and we have no intention of ever getting married. The point of dating is not to get tied down. If you're not confident, you should be. In my mind, anyways. The first two, but I don't care too much about the other girl.
Okay, so he is cool with you dating other people, question mark.
And I'm not I happy per se, just realistic that there's cracks and it's far from perfect. I doubt it. If he has seen someone else, I wouldn't want to know either way. He probably feels the same. And you probably feel that way about whoever you hook up with. I think that's normal.
Okay.
You don't agree, W me, at a bar?
I wasn't suggesting anytime soon. I know you're with your friend. I meant my house.
Probably after 8.
Okay, if you don't wanna, that's fine. No pressure.
I will. A drink.
Tap the bubble with a question mark. What do you drink? Question mark. Are you out now? Question mark.
Sorry, I'll drink whiskey if that's what you're having.
I responded, haha, send me a pic of you two. So Sunday, January 23rd at 9:40 p.m.
Brian said, stranger. Hey, I was at Hilly all weekend. Brian said, have not heard from you. Phone works both ways.
Thought you were all set? Question mark.
With talking? No.
Are you sure? And she didn't respond. That was it for that, the 23rd. I'm sorry.
The texting stopped between Karen and Brian, and the last message that was sent from Karen was like on the 23rd of January. And then the next message that was sent was from Brian to Karen on the 28th, and she did not reply.
So then the next date that any text communication was sent between the two of you would have been Friday, 11:32 p.m. Is that correct?
That's correct. That would have been when we were at the waterfall.
And again, what does the text say there?
Well.
That's from you to her, is that correct?
Yes.
And the interesting thing about this particular thing is on the night of the 28th, this was the Friday night, when they were at the waterfall, Brian Higgens was there with Brian Albert. And okay, we know the whole story, right? We've been building upon this, everybody who was there. So when they were at the waterfall that night, Karen came in with John, as we know, and apparently Karen went talking to everybody, saying hello to everybody, and she didn't talk to Brian Higgens. Not only did she not talk to him, she didn't even acknowledge him at any point during the night. And Mr. Jackson said, she ignored you. And he said he didn't feel she was ignoring him, that she was just working the room and talking to everybody. And Mr. Jackson asserted that he was bothered enough for him to send Karen a message, a text message, and say, well, and Karen didn't reply. So the night progressed. Everybody left the waterfall and were headed back to Brian Albert's home. And at 12:20 a.m., Brian Higgens texts John, quote, you coming here, question mark, question mark, question mark, end quote. But did not text Karen asking her if she was going there. Clearly she was ignoring him. Why? I don't know. That's speculation. It could be like she lost interest in him. She didn't want it to look like they were friendly. They've been talking to each other on the side. I don't know what the reasoning was. It's totally speculation. Said that when him and Carrie would meet up, that it was similar to their text conversations, which to me is not much. Those were the most grueling text messages to go over. It's okay, is something good gonna come? And then no. I don't see a lot of motive here. I see they were talking to each other and shouldn't have been doing that considering Karen was in a relationship, but I don't see a lot of motive coming out of those messages. So I think prosecution hurt themselves by showing the depth of those conversations. I don't see a motive coming out of it that Karen wanted him dead because she wanted to be with Brian Higgens or something. I just don't feel that way. What do you think? Do you feel that way about the messages? In cross-examination from defense, we actually found out that Brian Higgens showed up to court this day with an attorney, a personal attorney. Brian was asked about a comment he had made at another officer's banquet, I believe it was. He said, quote, if you want to hide a body, Kenny Berkowitz is your man, end quote. He was asked about that and he said he doesn't remember saying that. So that's as far as it goes. Whenever they seem to deny something, That's like as far as you can take it. Judge Beverly, stop. After defense had started asking questions to Brian about his relationship with Brian Albert and the other police officers, Mr. Lowley started objecting a lot to the questions that were being asked. And then, of course, Judge Beverly was continuously sustaining them and calling them into sidebar. Mr. Jackson asked him more about his text messages, about how he kept asking her, what now what? And he just continuously stated that he was trying to vet things out, quote unquote. He was trying to vet things out to see what her intentions were with messaging him, and that she just continued to not answer those questions. Mr. Jackson is saying within this testimony through these text messages, the way they're interpreting it is that Brian was the one that was interested in Karen, and he kept saying no, that he was not interested in her romantically. Mr. Jackson's like, okay, well then how do you define romantic? And he said romantic is sending someone flowers. So I guess basically he was saying he was interested in Karen to have sex with her, but not interested in any kind of romantic relationship. But wait, it goes on. So Mr. Jackson said, okay, dating interests. And Brian said, well, it would be hard for someone to be dating someone who is already in a relationship. But after going back and forth with him some more, and using like his text messages against him, he finally agreed that he was interested in a romantic relationship with Karen. A lot of wasted time just to get back to the beginning there. The texting stopped between Brian and Karen like about the 23rd. That was like the last day that Karen actually messaged Brian. And then the next message that was sent was from Brian to Karen on the 28th. She did not reply. And the interesting thing about this particular thing is on the night of the 28th, this was the Friday night, when they were at the waterfall. You know the whole story, right? We've been building upon this, everybody who was there. So when they were at the waterfall that night, Karen came in with John, as we know, and apparently Karen went talking to everybody, saying hello to everybody, and she didn't talk to Brian Higgens. Not only did she not talk to him, she didn't even acknowledge him at any point during the night. And Mr. Jackson said, she ignored you. And he said he didn't feel she was ignoring him, that she was just working the room and talking to everybody. And Mr. Jackson asserted he was bothered enough for him to send Karen a message, a text message, and say, well, and Karen didn't reply. And at 12:20 a.m., Brian Higgens texted John. So then, the night progressed. Everybody left the waterfall and were headed back to Brian Albert's home. And at 12:20 a.m., Brian Higgens texts John, quote, you coming here? Question mark, question mark, question mark, end quote. But did not text Karen asking her if she was going there. So after he had already messaged Karen is ignoring him at the bar. He texts, say like what's going on, hello, and she's still ignoring him. They all leave, and then Brian Higgens texts John to ask if they were coming and didn't bother to text Karen, even though those two have been texting on the side. So clearly, to me, she was ignoring him. Why? I don't know. That you could leave that up. That's speculation. It could be like she lost interest in him. She didn't want it to look like they were friendly, that they've been talking to each other on the side. I don't know what the reasoning was. It's totally speculation, but this is what took place. Mr. Higgens said while they were at 34 Fairview, he said he was seated in the kitchen and that he left the kitchen at one point to look at some photos. This, I think, was a red flag. We could put a red flag moment, or this was a tall telling sign of somebody lying here. So he said he had left the kitchen at one point to go look at some photos that were on the first floor. Mark that. In his previous testimony, he had stated under oath that he had never been upstairs at the Albert home before. And And he agreed again today that he had never been upstairs at the Alberts' home. And so Mr. Jackson said, if somebody said you went upstairs to look at some photos, what floor would you have been on? You can answer that, right? You would be on the second floor if you went up to that floor, right? You would have started out at the first floor and went up to the second floor. But he's saying he's never been on the second floor. And then started, and so this kind of went back and forth. Like Mr. Jackson was like, okay, if you were on the first floor, what would be the floor below you? And he said, the basement. And he's like, and what would be the floor above you if you were on the first floor? And he's like, the second floor. And he's like, okay, now if somebody said they went upstairs to look at photos, what floor would they be then going to? And he just like could not comprehend these questions. Because, it was like, boom, right there, just like hung either Brian Albert's line or he's lying. And I am thinking it was probably Brian Albert who was lying. But so with these questionings and Brian becoming really confused about what floor is what and where would he be going, Judge Beverly actually just stopped the questioning and told him, save it for argument, move on to the next question. I don't know what that means. We would have to ask an attorney what that actually means, but I just think like, okay, here's an instance where you're catching somebody in their lies. Somebody's lying here. And Judge Beverly stops it. Like, you stop the questioning and can you imagine your attorney being told, move on? Like, your life is hanging in the balance here. Like, you're about to probably go to prison for the rest of your life for murder. And your attorney just finally got some, leeway, finally just made a little progress on like, here's a lie being told. And the judge tells you, save it for argument and move on. So that's what he had to do. And so Mr. Jackson also brought up that at a previous hearing, Brian Higgens said, quote, a male showed up that may have been Julie Nagel's brother, end quote. And he had described him as tall with dark hair, and that the male may have come into the house and that he was there briefly and that it looked like he had a conversation with the girls that were there at the table with what was the son's name? Oh, I can't remember it. I think it's called. And that it was less than a couple minutes. I think who he was describing was probably Colin, the one that had showed up for a while and then left, and it was no one reported that he was at the house because he was just not part of the people who were at the bar. I think that's who he's describing here. He says that he thought it was Julie Nagel's brother, but according to everyone who's been on the stand already, they've all said that Julie's brother waited in the truck for her. So either Julie's brother didn't wait in the truck for her and he came in and that was all a lie, or he just didn't know who this was and it was actually Colin. And he said the time that he spent at the Albert home was about an hour. And the reason why is because they didn't have the alcohol. He preferred drinking, and so he felt that it just wasn't going to be much longer of a night because he was going to be leaving after, like, shortly. And so when he described, he was questioned about when he left back to his vehicle, if there was anything out of the ordinary in the front yard, and he said no. And it was questioned like, you're a trained officer, you're a trained first responder, like you are trained to be looking for things out of the ordinary. What, did anything look out of place? And he said, no, nothing looked out of place. And he said he didn't see a body in the front yard. And he said he didn't see a body in the front yard as he drove away from the Albert home to go back to the police station. And he said that the reason why he went back to the police station was because he went to go move vehicles at the police station, and then went home and drank some more and then went to sleep. You can chop that up how you want. It could look like suspicious behavior of him just like creating an alibi, or it could truly be he was going to move vehicles because of this snowstorm or whatever, that he didn't want other vehicles blocked or something. I don't know. I don't know really what to make of that. But anyway, so at 2:22 a.m., at 2:22 and 35 seconds a.m., Brian Albert called him, and there was called Brian Higgens, and there was no answer. And then at 2:22 and 52 seconds a.m., Brian Higgens called Brian Albert back, and that lasted for 22 seconds. And this was 5 minutes before there was a Google search for how long to die in the cold. This was objected to and sustained. So if you remember, Jennifer McKay had that search in her search history about how long it takes to die in the cold. So this is what I believe Mr. Jackson was referencing. So when he asked Brian Higgens, this call of him missing the call from Brian Alberts and then him calling Brian Alberts back, that this was 5 minutes before the search on Jennifer McCabe's phone about how long to die in the cold. And prosecution objected, and Judge Beverly sustained it, which I think would be rightfully so. Sometimes his objections, scratch all that, which would be rightly so, because he wouldn't have anything to know about what Jennifer McCabe testified to. So that's why it would be objected to. So he said he thinks it could have been he said about the call that he thinks it could have been a butt dial he thinks it could have been a butt dial, I guess, from Brian Albert to him. And so then he called him back, but apparently nobody talked or something. It was just quiet. So it was like 22 seconds of nobody talking. This is what he said. However, in previous testimony, he said he did call. Okay. Whoa, scratch all that from about the... Shoot. Okay, so he said he thinks that the call had just been a butt dial, and that he doesn't remember even making the call. However, in previous testimony, he said he did call Brian Albert's phone, that he called him back, and that he said we sat in silence, no one talked, and then I hung up. That's what he said in previous testimony, but today in court he was saying he thinks it was a butt dial and he doesn't even remember making the call. Mr. Lowley objects to the questions defense asks, and the more Judge Beverly sustains his objections, the more guilty they look. And I think they're trying to create the reversal to make it look like Karen's more guilty, but it's making prosecution's witnesses look more guilty. After Brian's testimony and questioning from Mr. Lowley, Brian didn't look as guilty as I had originally thought he was. I just feel like Brian Higgens just got involved with the wrong people, and him and Karen had this like side conversations taking place. These whole text messages took place over like a span of like 2 or 3 weeks. It just looks like Brian got involved with the wrong people, inadvertently put himself right in the middle of all this. And because of Mr. Lowley's continued objections to defense's questions, it just makes Brian look not innocent. He was asked questions about what he did when he got home from 34 Fairview that night, and he said he ate and went to sleep, and that he awoke to both of his phones blowing up, quote unquote, around 6:30 a.m. Chief Berkowitz called first, and then Brian Albert called him second. So he said after he was awakened that morning, he talked to Brian Albert, and then he went over to Brian Albert's home. He said it was because he went to support them because of what had happened. Okay, so he was questioned about if his vehicle had ever been inspected by any police officers, and he said no, it has not been inspected by any police officers at any point, nor have any police officers attempted or asked him to search his vehicle. They also reviewed the phone logs of Brian Higgens, and there were several calls or multiple calls between Brian Albert and then with Kevin Albert talking with Mr. Higgens, as well as Chief Berkowitz. Mr. Jackson was implying at this point that he was at the police station getting, being like the middle person, getting information and passing it between Brian Albert and Kevin Albert and Chief Berkowitz, but he says no, that's not why he was there. Karen Reed's vehicle was delivered to the police station while Brian Higgens was there, and the key logs for the police station show Brian Higgens in the Sally Port. He says he doesn't have any memory of being there or seeing her car or Chief Berkowitz at that point. He said that he just uses the Sally Port as a shortcut to get to some other location in the police station. Brian Higgens has who he calls a best friend who works for the FBI. And as a result of that, Brian took his cell phone over to his friend's work over at the FBI, and his friend got Brian's cell phone and hooked it up to a machine that they have, so that way he could pull all of the text message conversation between him and Karen off of it to give to the police. Mr. Jackson also stated, you did that, but you also have the ability for the police to do their, their investigative work and take it off for you. Like, you didn't need to go and get your use your connections, your friends at the FBI to get this information. But Mr. Jackson also thinks that the reason why Brian did it that way was because that way he could pick and choose what information was pulled and extracted to hand it to law enforcement. And it was also pointed out that Brian used this machine for personal use and not because he was working a case or anything like that. And so that actually is against the law. And it was at that point Miss Beverly stopped the questioning before he answered the question about the fact that he was using the FBI's machine for personal use, allowed for Mr. Higgens' personal attorney to come into the courtroom. And he stood next to Brian Higgens, who was on the stand. Judge Beverly stated, quote, Mr. Jackson is going to make an offer of proof of a question he's about to ask your client, or couple of questions he's about to ask your client. Doesn't make any sense to me that somebody has counsel and counsel is not aware of a potential issue. Higgens would then be asked a question, and his attorney would then be given opportunity to take Brian out of the courtroom, talk to him about the question, and then come back into the courtroom and answer the question. His actions of using that FBI's machine for personal use is actually a federal offense. He was questioned about where his phone was that was used to extract this information, and he said he threw the phone away because he had every right to. That was what his response was. The day before he received the court order, just like Brian Albert, is when he decided he was going to throw the phone away. A little convenient, don't you think? Brian Higgens said he changed phone carriers and phone numbers. If you remember Brian Albert's response of why he got rid of his phone the day before he received the court order that he's not allowed to destroy it or alter it or get rid of it in any way, he said he upgraded his phone. He didn't get rid of it. He upgraded his phone, and he had been planning on doing it. And so since it was his birthday, he was that's why he went ahead and upgraded his phone. Brian Higgens now is saying he just got rid of it because he has every right to. That's pretty suspect if you ask me, and pretty big red flags. Obviously something's being hidden here, that he's having his own FBI friend pull the information off of what he's going to hand to law enforcement to use for evidence within this case. And during this time, Mr. Lowley was objecting repeatedly. And at one point, Mr. Jackson said he had one last question, and Mr. Lowley stood up. And Mr. Jackson said, quote, "Mr. Lowley is already standing and I haven't even started," end quote. Judge Beverly told Mr. Lowley to sit down. And then someone laughed in the court, and then they said order in the court or something. So the question Mr. Jackson asked was, quote, "Did you remove the SIM card from that phone, drive onto a military base, throw the SIM card in one dumpster and your phone in a different dumpster?" End quote. Brian responded, "That's not correct." And when Mr. Jackson went to ask a follow-up question based off that testimony, Judge Beverly said, "No, you got your one question. Folks, that's it for today." And that's the way she ended trial for the day. I think it was an interesting little bit of information we got right before she ended it. The fact that Brian took this SIM card and drove onto a military base and threw the SIM card in one dumpster and the phone in another, and did all of this the day before he receives the court order not to destroy or alter or get rid of the phone. It's just so frustrating to me that, I'm trying to be as impartial as I can to these reviews, but it is so hard not to just give my real opinion of how I feel about all of this. I'm trying to keep it, as objective as I can. I know since this trial is already old, I've seen a lot of people who believe that Karen is guilty. And I just find, based off of what we've seen now to day 17, that anyone who could come to a conclusion that Karen Read is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt as of today with trial 17 is off the rocker. There is so much information here that I don't see how anyone in their right mind or in a reasonable mind could come to the conclusion that Karen is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. There may be reason to think she's guilty, but beyond a reasonable doubt is pushing it. So I'm not quite sure why these people think that Karen is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The fact that these two individuals got rid of their phones is so incriminating, in my opinion. Like, how is this even legal? What do you think about the fact that Brian Albert and Brian Higgens both discarded their phones the day before they get the court order not to destroy it? Like, I want to hear somebody's opinion on how they rationalize that behavior. Share in the comments if there's anything you guys would like to hear more of. Like, if you would like to hear more of my opinion or what I think of some of this evidence, I will start putting that in the videos, but I've just tried to keep it as impartial as I can during my reviews, so that way you guys can come to your own conclusion. And also, please leave a thumbs up so that way I know you guys are enjoying these and I'll keep making these. I mean, I'm gonna take you guys to the end of the trial, and I'm just not gonna leave anybody hanging, even if it's just one person. Or share it with friends, family, the more the merrier. With that, I'll talk to you guys for trial day 18. Talk to you later. Bye.